if you have a lot of power and you have unprocessed trauma, sometimes that reveals itself as being authoritative or despotic or just pretty much crazy. And a crazy person or an emotionally unhealthy person that wields a lot of power is very dangerous. Welcome to the YouNeek Show, where we talk about all things YouNeek Studios, African geekdom, and the business of creators. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome to the YouNeek Show. My name is Roye Okupe, and I am the CEO and founder of YouNeek Studios. Co-host, intro yourself.
Hey, my name is Jay Abaje, a true
Nice.
descendant of the old Oyo Empire.
Here we go.
Sure, of the Nigerian nerds today.
Oh Lord. All right.
And you'll know why I said that later when you get into our topic
You
for
sure
today.
will. Yep. Yep.
Yeah. Today we're going to be diving into some our series and theme from the YouNeek Show that talks about African history and mythology, meeting fantasy, right?
Yep.
And I think today we're going to be diving into how the Oyo Empire,
Yeah.
which has been recently shown to be some bad guys, so we bad
Let's
guys,
not get into that. Come on, man.
we inspired the politics of Malika and other books that were written by Roye. So we're going to dive into how some of these old stories inspired some of the newer fantasy stories being created by people like Roye today.
Yeah, so I mean, if anybody knows anything about me, it's like it's that I like to take different parts of African history, most of the time West African history, and integrate some of those things into the fantastical stories that I tell, and take some of the things that I deem interesting, positive, colorful about African history, and find a way to intertwine that into the reality of the unique universe. And obviously the unique universe is its own thing. It's its own world. um but at the same time, I always like to have things that are rooted in some form of reality that we can trace back to actual African history. And one of the things was the politics of Iyanu and Malika. I wanted to really figure out, okay, how do I integrate what was sort of like an interesting political system in back in those days. And if you look at the Oyo Empire, um I believe they had something that we call a selective monarchy, which is you have a monarch, but the monarch is surrounded by a council. In the Oyo Empire was called the Oyo Messi. So they were essentially the council that advised the king, and they were put there to check the king. So the king or the queen doesn't have ultimate power. And if you look at Malika, for instance, Malika is the queen of Azaz, the empire of Azaz. So again, for those that don't know, Malika is a historical fantasy story that follows, a queen that obviously Malika, who tries to keep the peace in her ever expanding empire. And in Malika, she's the queen, but she also has the council of five, and each of those five people represent the five kingdoms that are within the empire, and that sort of mirrors what we have in the Oyo Messi. If you look at Iyanu as well, too, it's actually much closer to what we have in the Oyo Ile Empire, the Oyo Messi. Is that the council is actually called the Elu Messi, and Elu is the city of which is the city that obviously Iyanu takes place in, at least one of the main cities as well. And on that council, it's the same sort of um, political regime, which is there's a king, and then there's the Elumesi that sort of advises the king as well. Now, the difference between Malika and Iyanu is that Iyanu is closer, like I said, closer to the Oyemesi, where if the king dies, right, it's not just the heir that becomes the king. Essentially, what happens is that there is a pool of heirs, right? They call them the Aremo. There's a pool of heirs that have royal blood. So anybody that has any sort of connection to like a royal line gets put in a selection ritual, which then allows the Elu Messi, or in back in those days, the Oyo Messi, pick that person and then ascend them to the throne. I thought that was interesting. It's sort of like, democracy mixed with monarchy,
Yeah,
and
hybrid.
there are checks and balances again, where it's like I think when I was researching, one of the things I saw was that no emperor was capable of being enthroned in the capital without prior consent
Mhm.
and a performance of rituals by the seven title holders, which is the Oyo Empire. So I thought that was a very, very interesting way of doing things. I don't know if you've ever gotten a chance to research that, and what were your thoughts on just the political system in general?
Well, I never really researched it, but I have had, in conversations with others, sometimes looked into and casually read about it and realized that a lot of the governance systems of Africa
Yeah,
evolved out of what worked for the people, either based on
exactly.
cultural beliefs,
Yeah,
their
spiritual beliefs.
spiritual beliefs,
Yeah.
and that is one of the things I think modern Africa could probably learn from the past, right? Which
Mm-hmm.
is wake up to the realization that transplanting a Western method of governance may not be ideal. And I think in truth, some of the problems that we've seen in Africa today have come because people are trying to rebel against some of those norms. And
Mm-hmm.
the ones where in the areas where it works, it oftentimes comes across looking a little authoritarian.
Mm-hmm.
But the truth is, Africa is going to be Africa, and all these different cultures and tribes in Africa are going to have to find their own, find the best
Mm-hmm.
of both worlds, and find that
Yeah.
hybrid structure.
Yeah.
I can only hope it happens eventually.
Yeah, I mean, one thing that you said that was important is that, okay, what works for the people? I think the people are in any sort of system, they're the most important,
Mhm.
right? I always feel like leadership, whether it's kingship or a politician, you're there to serve. You're
Mhm.
not there to be served.
Yeah.
It's always been, just my own personal, belief, and that's some of the things that I've integrated into, the books. Like Malika is a queen that serves. As a
Mhm.
matter of fact, I mean, I know again, no, this is fiction and it's fantasy, but as a matter of fact, like when they go to war, she's part of the front line. Like she's not a general that stays at the back
Mhm.
and it's like, oh, attack here or move here or whatever. Malika actually leads from the front.
Yeah.
There's a cool sequence in the book where Malika is riding with her a cavalry in the beginning of volume one, and the general spots a kid that's about to be attacked by a leopard,
Mhm.
and Malika is like, we need to help this kid, and the general was like, there's a bigger war going on, we need to get that, we need to go towards that as opposed to worrying about this little kid. Like, leopards eat little children all the time if they get out of their
Yeah.
house, or if basically you get what you
Survival
get.
of the fittest. Yeah.
Yeah. And survival of the fittest. I'm like, and it was like, why do you, and the general was like, we don't need to be bothering with people that are basically in the extremities and the far parts of our kingdom. And
Mhm.
Malika was like, the people that are in the far parts of my kingdom are still my people.
True.
So she doesn't have this. And don't get me wrong, Malika is not a perfect person. If you read the book, you will see a lot of her flaws, but she has this understanding that whoever is within the boundaries of Azaz, I can die for one single person.
Right.
I think that's a powerful thing, for a leader. It's sort of like that, what you see in the Bible, where it's like Jesus goes after the one and leaves the 99.
Yeah.
I think that is true leadership. And you get to see that in Malika, and you get to see that obviously a little bit too in Iyanu again. So yeah, it's very I try to really, really just balance the fantastical elements with some real life politics, but do it in an ideal way where I feel like this is how leaders are supposed to, appear to their constituents. It's a position of service as opposed to one where you want to be served.
Yeah. Because the truth is, all power is given to you. If you act like you somehow own and deserve that all power, you're not giving your best to the people. And that's one of the
Right.
things I like about the Malika book is the fact that you, like any good writer, you write. There should be an element of aspiration, an aspiration
Exactly.
for the story.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
granted, this is basically a monarchy,
Yeah.
but it also has the checks and balances that will keep the monarchy humble, which
Yeah.
ideally should free the monarchy to start thinking, okay, these people will keep me from going too far in my
Yeah.
power. Now
Yeah.
you can really give yourself to your people.
Yeah.
Now you can really decide, okay, I'm going to give myself to the lowest of the low, the most
Yeah.
powerless in my kingdom, and
Yeah.
do for them what I can.
Yeah.
Because you already have a check against you being too egotistical.
Yeah.
So you might as well go out of the way to help people. And
Yeah.
that's where that aspirational balance I really love in the story comes from.
Yeah.
Uh,
I mean,
yes, Malika does save the child from the leopard.
she does, and in a badass way, actually. Like, so definitely check that. I think she gave the leopard a drop kick. It's one of the most funny,
I
funniest, and cool looking panels in
we
the
didn't
entire
totally
book.
abandon the fantasy.
I know exactly right. Well, the checks and balance thing that you said in the podcast, because I wanted to read another excerpt that I saw when I was researching, is that the Oyo Messi were also expected to serve as a check on the despotic authority of each individual emperor that they crown. So essentially, there's no room for like a mad king or anything like that. It's like,
Oh no!
if you're starting to get out of line, there were some things that I can't mention on the
Oh,
podcast.
I want to mention it. I want to no. I want to. Are you kidding? Listen, if you started to get out of line, they would let you know that, dude, you are out of line. We're going to vote against you and pick somebody else. You, as the emperor, were expected to end yourself. Basically, now, okay, time to commit ritual suicide, honorably end yourself.
Yeah.
And that would be the end of it. It was, I mean,
Yeah.
now granted, we don't really want to see that today. We'd rather
Yeah,
see
that's
abdication, we'd
extreme.
rather see, the wisdom of that emperor maybe go into be recycled
Yeah.
into helping the next person who takes charge.
Yeah.
Which is the ideal situation because life is valuable. You don't just
Yeah.
throw it away. But I guess in a way, they also understood that, once a person's held power, sometimes they can't go back. And that's one
Yeah.
of the hardest things to do.
Yeah.
And that's one of the things that happens in books like Malika, and you also see in Iyanu. It's
Yeah.
about power and how to handle it and what happens when you lose
Exactly.
it.
Yeah.
And how do you, does this person become a despot, or do they become a part of the fabric of the society again? Is there room for life after power? These are
Yeah.
interesting topics that Roy is going to explore in more and more of his books.
Yeah, and just to really sort of like round this up, like if you look at Iyano as well too, it's also a story of how does somebody handle like great power, not just power that comes with like politics, but actually physical divine power that's
Mhm.
above everybody else. And ultimately Iyanu is a story of two characters. Like you have Iyanu, who is chosen, and then you have the fallen, who is a divine one that sort of fell out of the group of what we call the angels of this um universe, because he felt like humans needed to worship him as opposed to him helping human beings. And both of these, when you get to read the story, it's also something that you get to see where it's like you see how people that have dealt with trauma, how they respond to it when they have power, because that's another important thing. Like if you have a lot of power and you have unprocessed trauma, sometimes that reveals itself as being authoritative or despotic or just pretty much crazy. And a crazy person, or an emotionally unhealthy person that wields a lot of power is
Mhm.
very dangerous. On the other side, an emotional healthy people that has emotional intelligence and cares about people, that has true power, is
Mhm.
a very powerful person that can really unite people and essentially do what is needed to be done to save a people, or advance them in the direction that they need to go. So yeah, it's like, for me, I always like to have these different um undertones in my books, so that it's just more than just this superhero. Oh, there's this person with superpowers and they punch the bad guys in the face. When you get to read Malika or Iyanu, they really both dive into the use of power, and how different people respond to it in a light and a dark way.
Indeed. So much to learn and so much to take away from this. The truth of the matter is, African politics is fascinating because
Hmm.
when you start to break it down, Africa is not a country, obviously. So
Hmm.
there's so many different sub nations and nation states that existed that you can learn from, for
Mm-hmm.
better and for worse.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why we encourage
Exactly.
you, make time, look into the books and the works produced by YouNeek Studios. There's a lot there that your children can also, those who are interested in Africa, can get some, granted a little bit aspirational, but a lot of that we want to pass across the positives, right,
Right.
from these histories. And I think a
Yeah.
lot of that is very, very useful. It's one of the reasons why I encourage my daughter to read some of the works from YouNeek Studios, because I know that she's going to absorb some of this stuff without
Mm-hmm.
necessarily having it spelled out as a history. She's going to
Right.
absorb some of this stuff as well.
Yeah.
So look up, go to YouNeekStudios.com, get yourself one of the YouNeek Studio books, start with Malika, and also jump into Iyanu. You'll begin to see that some of these concepts are being discussed there, and we'd love to hear your feedback. Tell people
Awesome.
where they can reach out to us.
At YouNeek Studios, all social platforms, Instagram, TikTok, Twitter, Facebook. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel here to be sure to know when we release another episode of the YouNeek Show. But aside from that, UneekStudios.com is the home for everything unique. And yeah, definitely check us out and support our books. Malika, Iyanu, EXO, Windmaker, they're all in stores everywhere books are sold right now.
And all those books are full of politics. Meanwhile, me, Nuru the Nerd Guru. You can find me on social media. You can find the Niger Nerds as well, which is the group I'm part of. Big fan of what Roy has written here. And again, I maintain, true descendant of the Oyo Empire back in the day. You can find all these works. Please look us up. Please subscribe to YouNeek Studios on YouTube as well. Peace out, everybody.
All right, take care.